Let's just laugh then.
Yeah.
So, we met on Facebook, and I don't really know that much about you other than you're a transformational coach. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey and how you got there and what's exciting for you these days?
Yeah. Oh, no, we don't have enough time.
Let's just laugh then.
Yeah, and this is very healing if we just record half an hour of laughter between So today's podcast is really original.
It's full of laugh. We'll try and talk a little bit in between, but I have this feeling that we're just going to laugh more than
It's
anything else.
mostly laughter. Well, that's a good start. I tell you, I'm like all pumped up. So actually, yeah, transformation is part of the result of what people achieve. I like to call myself soulful business coach, but the label doesn't mean anything really. It's about, what I do. And basically how I came here on the journey, it's a long roller coaster journey. And the very short version is that I have lived a life. I have lived a life that many people tell me, I can't believe this is all you did, that you did all of this in your life, even though I'm 53 years old, but I really have lived like what 10 people live, and intense 10 people. So, and I love to say the easiest example I have is that I currently have a life partner, Stefano. We're not married, and he's amazing, and we've been together for 8 years. And my first husband I married very young, and I helped him to understand a lot of hard issues, and help him to understand that he's gay. The second husband was abusive, and is the father of my 2 children, and an amazing story there, you can imagine. And this one is love. So I have in one life had all 3 experiences. And it's like that with every aspect, with health, with illness of others and mine, and healing and non-healing, and death and suicides and everything, all the colors. And I can say that that on the personal level, and on the professional level, I love studying. I went all the way to have a master's in business administration. I lived the life of the corporate executive. I got very high, and I traveled international and as expat. And then when I finally divorced the father of my children, I said, I really want to be by their side. And that's when I first tapped into being an entrepreneur, and I created a real estate company in Tuscany. At the time I was in Tuscany. I'm actually Argentine by birth. And then I've done that for like 11 years. And right now I'm closing it. I sold it last month, and this month was all about, going to the accountant and the lawyer and the notary, and I have launched this soulful business coach dream venture really this year, and it's been in tippy toes at the beginning of the year, and the whole year has been about closing the old energy and opening up and setting the scenario for next year to say, hooray, here I come, so lots happening.
Yeah. It sounds like you've had like you said, you had a massive experience of what life can be, and I would imagine that would make you really great at giving, holding the space for and giving advice around transition, right?
Well, and then of course I didn't mention it, but I have been studying for years healing and colors, and healing with colors and with sounds, and I'm a reconnector practitioner, and all that stuff as well. So it's like I think the one thing probably that's quite unique, and we're seeing more of this, thankfully, for the earth, is that I have two hemispheres that are very well integrated. Like, you know, I'm a channeler and, you know, I'm a healer, and I've been doing this since I was like 19. And on the other hand, I've been, you know, a director for Southern Europe and Middle East, you know, and so I can do both things. And now finally I came out of the closet and I said, yes, this is me. I am a channeler too, and I'm a medium, and who cares, you know, but it took me a while to get there. So
yeah, this is like that bridge for quite a while, because I've been doing web design for the holistic community and dealing with the very technical side of all the nerdy stuff, and so for a long time I saw myself as a bridge, but I've never heard it said as like the, you know, your hemispheres are integrated. That's a great way of putting it, right? Yeah,
well, but
like,
it is, you know, because I have lived divided for so many years.
yeah.
You know, it's almost like I was going to the holistic events or meditation retreats, and I was only that. And then I would come out of that and I would get into the other world, and I would keep them separate. And that gave me so much suffering. And I like to share that because I think many people go through similar experiences. I've had feedback of many people telling me
My
that
goodness.
happened to them or
Yeah.
has happened to them.
Yeah. I've met so many, you know, spiritual healer types who are like, if I touch technology, it explodes. If I, you know, that stuff just makes my head like
Yes,
crash in, or, and like,
demonizing technology.
yeah. Whereas for me, it's been very, I mean, I'm a younger generation, right? I'm in my 30s. But so for me, like my first computer, I was 5,
Of course.
because my dad was really nerdy. But yeah,
I
thanks, Dad. Yeah, but for me, it's always been this, like, you know, this integration between the two. And when I see, you know, moving forward right now, we're doing lots of work around like the future of the village, right? So getting back to the earth, back on the land, but also bringing this high technology like LED full spectrum lights, right? Stuff like that.
Very,
And so that speaks really beautifully to that left brain, right brain piece.
yes,
Yeah.
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 Wow, I love that vision of what you just said, the
Oh
village,
yeah.
coming back to the village.
Yeah.
You know, I have 2 boys, and my eldest is 19 and one is 16. And it's so funny because what you just said inspired me to share with him later on tonight, for sure, because he is in the process of choosing his career, and right now he's in the first year of university. And it's so weird, you know, he's 19 and he's been living in this world you've just described, and he carries with him such older models in his mind which don't come from me, I tell you, because like here I am reinventing myself for the 4th time, you know, in life. So, like I was telling him the other day, it's like you don't have to think in the way in which the old society used to think. Oh, you start a career and this is what you need to do, and then, you know, you do this for the rest of your life. And I said, you know, look at me, I'm exhibit A, you know, it's like I'm launching this new tech business, and this is the 4th time I changed my career path since I was 18. So I love what you just said, because it speaks to the young generations. And I think that there's a world that's different and unique, and new paths that are being born right now, new paths for life of how do you call it? I need to, I love how you say it, courageous living. You know, I love that term, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I think courageous living is just going ahead with trust and initiative and enthusiasm, and open to the incredible things that are not yet invented or thought of, but that are right there. They're coming along every day. The evolution is so fast right now. It's a fascinating time to be living.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, and I'd love to hear you speak. You know, you said you were in your 50s and you've reinvented yourself 4 times. Like, what do you feel has allowed you to sort of let go of those old lives and step into a new life? Like, what is it that makes that possible for you?
I'm thinking for a second.
Yeah.
I can certainly speak clearly about this last transformation. But if I think about it, yeah, it's been different motivations every time. But The first time, going quickly, the first time I was an IT major, one of the first ones, information technology in Argentina. And then I discovered I was more of a people person. And that's when I said, okay, I'll go for an MBA and use that as a stepping stone to move into more of a commercial or human side. And that led to a completely different professional path, clearly.
Yeah.
And actually, I can tell you the defining moment where I made that crystal clear decision to change that path. I remember it, and I think I'll remember it my whole life, because it was one rainy day after a very certain 2 weeks of rain, and I went out running and I sat in front of the sea and I started crying, and my whole body was saying, this is not your path, and your path is a different path. And suddenly the new vision went boom, and it came to me. And I was probably 25 at the time. Yeah. And I'm like, and I can remember I was listening to
I don't know if you could see them, I had like wild goosebumps.
Yes, because you got it. It was, I was listening to with a Walkman. You don't know probably what a Walkman.
I do know. I'm not that young, but my son has no clue what it is.
And I was listening to this Carly Simon song, and it was like, I want to go live in the US. I was in Argentina at the time. I don't have the money. I don't know how to do this. I will ask for scholarships. The minute I go back to Buenos Aires, I was on vacation in Uruguay. I will request scholarships. And if I get one, then I know that's my path and I'll just go for it. And sure enough, I got one of the 10 scholarships in all of Argentina, a Fulbright scholarship from the US government. And with that, I came to the US, and it was like, you know, the vision came and then life went like, you know, and gave me the path.
Yeah.
Then, you know, the other transition when I divorced and started the real estate company, that was, pain was destroying me, literally. You know, I wanted to be with my kids, and it was the profound suffering that made me leap into the abyss. I had no clue what I was going to do. I left a corporate job that was well-paying, that maintained my family, and I went like, whatever, I just cannot do this anymore. So that was a little bit crazy. And
radically different, right? Like planned out, changed your career, went to college,
exactly.
like, you know, directed yourself that way, pure inspiration versus like, oh God, I'm like, get me out of here. Okay, go that way.
Exactly. And that's why I wanted to share the difference. And this time around, it's different, because this time around has been inspiration, but with a new awareness level. So it's been a choice. It's been finally, I'm clear about what I'm here for, at least from now onwards. I'm sure I'm here also because I created these two lovely men, or meant to be. But, you know, at different times in our lives, our purposes can change and evolve, or, you know, now they're older and more independent, and I'm being called with such a strong calling to do this finally. And it's like it brings together my whole life, you know, my corporate experience, the MBA, the entrepreneurship energy, and all of the soulful path and the healing part. And okay, this is where I'm going. But now it's a conscious choice. And I know I'm making a conscious choice. It's not as crazy as it was. So it's interesting to look back and, hey, with today's expectation, life expectation, I'm halfway there, you know, I still have lots.
No, not even a quarter of the way there, like an 18th of the way there.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I definitely know, like in my world, I've done a lot of that. Like, I can't handle it anymore. I'm doing this. I've done a lot of that kind of transformation. Have you had, you know, setbacks along the way in either of those transitions? Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about dealing with those, or?
Yeah. Well, definitely, the hardest part when I followed my heart into starting the entrepreneurship company. So the biggest driver was that I could be close to my boys as they were being raised, because my ex left the country, went back to the US. And so I was, you know, the sole breadwinner and carer, and I couldn't be in a corporate job traveling 100% of the time. So, you know, that was a big deal. But of course, economically, I started this and the market, boom, crashed.
How old were your boys when you made that decision?
tiny because 11 minus 19 is what? 8 and 5. They were very young.
Really young, yeah.
Yeah. And I tell you that they are now, we have such an awesome relationship, and it's, I would do that decision twice over, even knowing that I had so many hardships economically to get through.
And thanks. That's super helpful.
Oh, yeah, because, I can see how they've become men of value, or meant to be, because they're 16 and 19, they already have values, and they're authentic, and they laugh just like me, But no, literally, it's like they love life. And I think that if I wouldn't have been for them there, it would have been different for sure. Not that I've been perfect, because I haven't. And just yesterday we were having a conversation about parenting, and no matter how much we try hard, we'll never be good enough, and it doesn't matter. My point is, the vibration of love is there. They know I do my best, and that's what you will carry in your life, if you know that. But
yeah.
So that was one very big hardship, obviously, because that's what life is about. And I was so, breadwinner for them and stuff. And that's clearly tough. But it's also, my gosh, if I look back, I also went into such a depression when I took that decision. And and you write a lot about depression. It's impressive when I read what you write, because I've been in that dark, dark, dark place more than once. And also a postpartum on the second baby. So, just thinking about it makes me recall what that space is about. And fear and discouragement and basically separation, and not remembering that we're one. It's like right now where I stand, things are not perfect by any means. And I have a strong health issue. I have to have a big surgery in February for my hips. And I look back at when I was in those spaces of dark night of the soul, and I think, how could I be there? And not like I don't forgive myself. No, it's like, from my perspective right now, from a soul perspective, I feel so joyful inside that it's hard to remember that, or to think that I can ever go back to that space. I don't think I will. I think the new level of consciousness already has put me in touch with this place where if I get up and I have some anxiety or I feel off and it happens, I immediately realize something's not right. So what's going on? So I immediately go into a different space, and I don't let it get to that level. It's the awareness that puts you in a different position. So yeah, life is not perfect. Sounds perfect when one tells a story fast like this, but no, it is not.
Yeah. Wow. I was wondering, could you talk a little bit about the difference in the experience between like one son and the other, and having postpartum with one and not with the other? I definitely identify as having had postpartum depression after the birth of my son, and I really don't know what it would be like to not have that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, well, the first time I didn't have the depression. So the first time was actually the first time. There's no time in this podcast to relate to you the experience I had, but in a very, very short two phrases, since the delivery was longer than a day, and I was fasting, and he ended up being born on, by itself, not cesarean, natural, but I had an out of body experience while I was delivering him. It was like an amazing, bizarre experience. It was such a difficult delivery, and I felt that I was being a channel for a soul to be born, and it's like the information was coming, and suddenly I see myself out there and I see the delivery, and it was bizarre and fantastic. And then this guy comes along, and I ask him, who are you? I don't know you. I didn't feel a connection to the baby the minute they put me on the baby on me. It's like I didn't remember him. But then it was like this discovery and falling in love with him. And I just was in love with this baby, you know, totally in love with the baby. And yeah, my mom used to kid me. She said, "You're in love with your son." You know, it's like, so yeah. And then thank God I had that experience. The second time around, my other son comes along, and it's like the reverse experience. Like, he is born, the delivery is more normal. He still has the umbilical cord attached. They put him on me, eyes closed. He comes up and starts like breastfeeding, in like with his eyes closed and the umbilical cord still on. And I'm like, I remember you. I know who you are. It's like, welcome back. You know, it's like I could feel the connection with his soul. And then in less than 10 days, I was in this desperate space and not having the strength to get up, and to crying all morning. And oh my God, you know, and thank God there I had this amazing OBGYN who saw it coming, and he was keeping an eye on me. And the one morning where I felt was really a tipping point, and I called my husband at the time, and he was at work, and he's like, "Well, just call the doctor." And I was crying, and I'm like, I couldn't even put myself into calling the doctor, because I don't know if I was scared or didn't have the energy to go through it, or I was like at the lowest of lows. Yeah. And if you've been through it, you know. And he called the doctor, and since the doctor knew, the doctor said, "You stop and drop whatever you're doing. I don't care if you're with the queen of some country, you come see me." And 2 hours later, my ex was home, and he was, you know, with some medicine or something. And, you know, he was there and helping me and containing the situation. But it was interesting that it was like the opposite, you know, the delivery was okay, and the rest was hard. So do you relate? I can see you acknowledging you relate to my postpartum depression feeling.
Yeah. Well, I remember that feeling of like not being able to move, not being able to do anything. You know, I was like up and down a lot, so I'd be like giggling hysterically, thinking everything was fantastic one day, and then like couldn't move. The whole world was going to destroy itself the next day. And yeah, I remember that. I'm curious about, like, you spoke with your first son about that experience of being like really in love with him, like right off the bat. Did you feel that really in love with your second son, or was it a more mellow, like, "Oh, I love you"? Like,
no, I did. And I think that was like an anchor in that moment of desperation, because mostly a weird dynamic ensued by which the father was jealous of the second one on behalf of the first child. And so like they paired against me. And then I had this level of overprotection towards the second boy, even though I was depressed. And that was good in a way, because it was like, you know, a loving protection.
Yeah. And you helped him.
Yeah.
I would imagine that your ex-husband was probably a second child. Yeah.
Oh boy, yes.
Yeah, so it's that projection of, you know, his own pain of feeling rejected by his mother.
He actually was an identical twin, worse than a second child.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that love of parent is like literally like split, and it's very challenging to be the parent of twins and to give the love and support. You know, we say it takes a village, and it takes more than a village for twins and for any kid. Yeah. So, wow. And I'm just kind of, when you spoke about like falling in love with your son, and there's this feeling, and when you were talking about that, I sort of had this idea of, you know, as mothers, we fall in love with our children, and our children, you know, there's that whole Oedipus complex thing where the boys are in love with their mothers. And I was wondering, or I was thinking about, you know, sometimes I speak with people, or I work with people around their relationships with their children, and talking to them about sexuality. And I was wondering if you wanted to dive into speaking about that, because your boys are now in their teens and coming into their roles as a man, like, how you've seen that dynamic change, or how your touch interaction has changed with them since when they were like little babies, obviously little boys.
So I will preface this saying that I think I'm very lucky
Mm.
because both my boys still hug me and tell me, "Mom, I love you." So I still think this is very cool. But as men, just these manly hugs, not like, childish. But so it's been interesting what you say, because we are a family put together, because Stefano and I have been raising my boys, and Stefano is not their genetic father. And Stefano being my partner, and we've had, and we still have a very, really romantic, loving relationship. That's why I'm saying I had all three experiences. We're
Yeah.
friends, and we are accomplices, and we are, we have this thing where the boys, even after dinner, we always have big chats. They say, well, we get up so you two can chat about your things, So, but Stefano being very much a man's man, and even younger than myself, and very much he likes sexuality and the woman, and completely faithful, but he's done his life and stuff. So he has been very open, and we've had incredible conversations at dinner time about sexuality, and
Mm.
about, before the first time my eldest son had his first relationship even, and giving him advice on how to go about it. And then I bought the first box of, condoms for him. But of course I told Stefano, you give it to him. And then after the whole event, our son came and said, well, so, who, thank you, you got me that box, of condoms. And he said to Stefano, I was surprised that you were so forethinking. And I said, well, actually, I bought it. And he's like, you did? And I'm like, yes. And he said to me, it was good that Stefano gave it to me and not you. So there's still the right level of being prude, with mom, but enough openness to be comfortable sharing what's going on. And I'm actually very proud about this. It's I think it's the dream of my life, was having this type of relationship in the family. And with the father of my children, I could have never had this. So the dream came with a different man, but the relationship is the same. There's that kind of love circulating around the table, so
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. I'm obviously separated from my son's dad, and although our relationship is like better in a way that I would have never imagined, like that leaving of of abusive situation, like I never even thought that we would speak again at some moments, and now it's like we have a more peaceful co-parenting relationship than a lot of
I'm
people.
glad to hear that. Mostly for
Yeah,
your son,
yeah, yeah. And at the same time, like I now have a partner in my life who's really beautiful and amazing, and this feeling of like, like there we go, this is what I wanted. I just
Yeah.
needed to, and partially it was letting go of the attachment that it had to be that person, right? I had such a strong attachment that it had to be this guy because he made the babies with me and
Yes.
the baby with me. And
Oh my God. That's a huge one, what you just
yeah,
said.
yeah,
I
yeah,
know for me, it took me years to decide to leave the abusive relationship, because I tried in every single way, because it had to be him. And,
yeah.
and then one day I said, well, it's not happening, so let it go. But yeah, you're so right. It's so difficult to reach that level of, okay, detach from, this outcome.
Yeah, yeah. I remember there was like such a clear. It was such a fascinating experience. Tell me if you've like if your experience of making that decision was anything like this, or I'd love to hear about your experience too. But I would go and I would sit and I would meditate. I had a favorite spot that I would meditate, and I would go and I would sit and I would ponder, and I'd be like, okay, like, is this relationship good for me? Should I keep being here? Is this like, am I okay? Like I was like, I'm not okay. But is it the right thing to leave? And at that point, by the time that last decision came, like we'd already done this 6 times.
Oh.
It was the 6th breakup, right? But the times before it had been like, this is too much, get me out of here. And in that moment, it was like, okay, if I make this decision one more time, like it's done. It's super done. And so I would sit and I would ponder, and I would come to the conclusion that, like, yes, I wanted I didn't want an alcoholic in my life, right? Like I had quit drinking a couple of years ago because of I'd seen what it was doing to my body, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, okay, clearly, like the sobriety of my partner is really important to me, like so important to me that I'm not willing to be, you know, in this relationship anymore. And then I would go back and be like, I would go back to the house, and he would be there with my son, and I'd be like, oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I just want to be here with you. Oh, and it wouldn't even be fun. Like we wouldn't even be having fun. We wouldn't even be like getting along very well. But it would just like my whole brain would just shut off, and it would not be able to even remember the clarity of the decision that I'd had before. And it wasn't until maybe like 2 weeks of doing this like every day, and I was like, no, when I'm on my own, I'm really clear, and when I get back together with him, I'm not clear, and like I can trust my decision, and I'm not happy when I'm with him, so like it makes sense that I should go with what I think when I'm on my own, you know. Yeah, and I'd love to hear if your experience was anything like that. Or...
I will tell you, but I'd love to ponder for a second on what you just told me, which is fascinating, because I was listening to your story with a lot of interest, and getting that how fascinating it is when we make decisions out of our mind only, which is what was happening to you. And that's why the mind is duality. And so, yes, I want, no, I don't want. Yes, I want, no, I don't want. And it's not until we bring it back to our hearts that the heart has no duality. And when we find something goes boom, and there is no way that you have doubts about that. But when we are in that, I go here, and now I go there. I go here, now I go there. We haven't yet taken it down from the mind. And I can relate to that, even though I didn't go into reactive mode, which is what you share. Tell me.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
Yeah. So when you said that, I was like, oh, right. Because there literally was a moment where it came back to the heart. You know, we were standing next to the beach, and he was saying something and being like kind of mean and hurtful. And I was like, like just flipping out. And what happened is I opened my arms up, and I was like, okay. You know, like the impulse is to like run away and hide. And I just opened my arms up, and I was like, I love this man, and I don't want to be treated like this. You know,
I love you more.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't even as far as that, but it was like, I deserve to be treated better than this, and I love him. And before that, every time we'd split, it had been this piece of, you know, I can't handle this anymore. You're bad. You're not like blaming him extensively. And in that moment, it was like, I love you. You're a person. You're suffering, and I deserve to be treated differently than this. You know, and that sort of like into the heart, like you said, was the moment when I was able to be like, okay, this is done.
It's a
and it came out of the mind and went into my heart. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen this a million times, not only in my life, but in other people's lives. And I love this validation of what you just said, because, and like, you know, evidently you had this mode. What's your zodiac sign? Are you a fire sign?
I'm a Virgo.
No, Virgo, like my first son. But you must have some fire somewhere up there, either the ascendant or...
My whole soul. Are you kidding me?
It's in fire.
I've got Leo rising, and
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, Leo rising, you know, Leo rising is Leo in the first house. The first house is how people see you. So we see the fire, we see Leo, you know, in you. So clearly I got that because I have Leo rising. So I got it to that sync, you see. I was getting the vibration.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, for me, it was so much suffering and such an amazing journey. I have to tell you, now I can tell you that he was my master in so many ways, because I was the top director in a multinational corporation. I had responsibilities. I was negotiating with Arab sheiks, and they were saying that I was an amazing woman. And these are chauvinistic men. And at home, I was like, oh, please love me. Please, I beg you. It was like, who is this woman? But it was like, you know, from a personal, emotional, I was so broken. And, you know, the professional side was completely different. It was like two different, I mean, completely crazy stuff, you know. But so I could tell, and, you know, the more we went along, the more he was mistreating me and abusing me verbally and stuff. And I knew I had to get out of it. But just like you, I just couldn't let go of the dream, you know, of the idyllic family. And I did love him. I did love him too.
Well, if we have sex with anybody more than like 5 to 10 times, we love them. That's how our bodies are wired as women, right?
With that person,
and 2 babies,
yeah.
I thought
like,
we were.
love them.
I thought we were done. I thought but he was there at the delivery, and it was like, right?
Again, yeah. No, it's not easy. And so for me, the similar thing to you is that I would, at the time, I no longer do this for a long time now, but I was chanting. I used to chant. My meditation was chanting. And I would chant for hours on end, trying to find the decision, should I divorce or not, or separate, or whatever word you want to use. And I think for at least more than 1 year, I did this chanting without making a decision, because I was still wavering. I was still, even though I didn't act upon it like you did, but I was feeling, yes, I want to, no, I don't want to. Yes, I want to, no. So I wasn't acting upon it, but I was feeling the same way. Like 2 days I wanted to be separated, and the other 2 I didn't. And so I just didn't do anything about it. And the magic about this, I was just sharing this with a friend 2 days ago, so I have it very fresh, was that then one morning, I just knew. The information just came. It's like something switched. Like in life, it always happens that way to me. And I think for everybody when it's that kind of decision. And I just knew I had to let go of this man and fast. And then I was scared about how do I tell him. And the fascinating thing was that this was a Tuesday morning, and that evening, in the bedroom, he said something mean, like he used to say, and I answered differently. I said something like, oh, you make it so difficult for people to love you or live by your side, or something like that. Nothing really, but he played the game of being offended, and he like grabbed his pillow and he went down to sleep in the living room. And I'm like, great. For the first time in my whole life, I didn't run after him like, please, please, you know. And then the next day, he was so angry that I hadn't gone up after him that he said, I'm going to live in the next room. And he moved to the next room. And the next day I went to the lawyer, and I said to the lawyer, how does it work? And she told me it was a feminine lawyer. And then I came back home and I told him, listen, I've been to the lawyer. This is how it works. And I'm going to be sending you a letter so we start the separation. So it's amazing. It's like the decision
like
was so powerful that I didn't even have to tell him. It just happened. Yeah. It's amazing. So, yes. but before that, I can totally relate, because I was feeling just like you say, like, oh yeah, I'm going to tell him. No, I'm not going to tell him. No, I'm going to tell him, you know? So it does work that way.
That mental space versus the heart space. Now, do you have something that you do now that works for you to like bring those decisions back to the heart space? Can you talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. I do meditate, many different types of meditations. I sometimes do visualizations and sometimes do silent meditations. My secret a tool is really my morning ritual, which varies. I'm not always the same, but my mornings before I go out into the world are an hour and a half or 2 where I'm on my own. Mm-hmm. And that includes meditation, journaling, breakfast in silence on my own. It includes a variety of things. It used to include walks in nature, but since I have this problem in my hips, I'm waiting to have the surgery so I can go back walking, because right now the pain is very much and I can't walk. But movement with my body was part of it, and it'll be back part of it. But always, for me, meditation, I'm a meditator. I've been meditating since I was 18, and there was a vanguard in Argentina when I was 18, 35 years ago, you know, in the military crew and stuff. But it's the thing, it does it for me, you know. It's just like, it's my thing. It's easy, and I love that space. And it's non-denominational, but it's still there, that sacred space of contacting inside. I think I think for everybody, that is a space we should all know. I mean, I'm biased about that.
Me too. What does it feel like? What if you could describe like the sensation of meditation in your body, or the experience, like?
Boy, it feels everything, because at times it feels like my body is like expanding, and almost like I'm getting out of the body, like I don't feel the body anymore. And at times I'm fidgety and I'm not doing it very well. And at times I'm emotional because something happens that triggers some emotional, and I just let it flow. This is probably one of the biggest myths that breaking it was powerful for me. So I'm going to share it now. And it's this myth that everybody used to say, that meditation is having no thoughts and a blank mind. And that's so far from the truth. You know, I mean, at times we do that. And maybe in an hour meditation, we manage to be in that space for 5 minutes, you know, and that's great. But meditation is not just that. It's just that being in that silent space and being, and that's why I separate and differentiate visualizations from meditations. I have channeled several visualizations, which I share freely. And I also sell a product that has a lot of channelings and stuff. And a visualization is when you guide somebody into their trip, into their journey, mind journey or whatever, you know. And it's a beautiful space. And I normally love to guide people in a visualization and then leave silent space in the middle. And that's where they meditate. You know, it's like in the visualization, to give you a clear understanding, maybe for, I don't know who listens, but for somebody, you know, when you guide people and say, oh, you're walking in the woods and you find a soft spot and you sit under a tree and you're looking out in the horizon and the sun is touching your skin. And, you know, you guide people into all of these sensations in the body, and you guide them into sounds and feelings and everything. And then you guide them maybe into a question or something. And then you just stay silent with some music. You leave them for 10 minutes to be in that space. That's when they are meditating, you know, whatever happens to them there. And then you bring them down. But the first part, that was a meditation. That was a visualization. At least that's the way, you know, I know.
Yeah. The use of imagination, like the use of imagination actually shuts down the thinking part of the brain, because we're imagining, right?
Exactly.
So then that's helpful. And it also, the act of using the imaginative part of the brain also turns off the fight or flight reflex, because that's a higher function that's not available.
It's an expedient we use.
Yeah. So it's a hack to get you there faster.
Exactly.
Definitely.
But also, and I love to mention this, for example, like I live in Tuscany in the countryside, and going for walks. If you go for a walk, you don't have to be in Tuscany to do this. You just don't have to be in the middle of a city with cars coming by you. But if you are anywhere where you can walk in any countryside or silent space, and you can be concentrating with your senses as you're doing the walk, that's an active meditation as well. You know, if you can just walk and focus on the sounds and on the colors and on the plants, and just walk and not have a precise, you're not going anywhere necessarily, you know. So I think, I mean, we could talk about meditation for, you know, a whole podcast, just that.
Yeah. Like, I think I would love to do that. I think that'd be great to do that. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I know that experience, like walking in nature. I've had moments where like I feel like my world is like this big, right? I'm so caught up in my thoughts. It's all up here, and like I can't even really, or maybe you're walking with somebody and talking and you don't even really see the view, versus doesn't matter if the view's great and the view's not so great, right? Versus like sort of opening your eyes differently and even like just looking around, you know?
Oh yeah. And one beautiful, easy exercise anybody can do, even if they live in an apartment, and as long as they have like a green plant or whatever, it's called the microcosm meditation. And if you're walking, it's just like, it's like leaning down and just looking at the tiny part, at the earth, and if you are like in the grass, watching the ants, and just going to this microcosm and just looking, and you start seeing so many things you never see, and you can be there for, you know, a long time, just like noticing more and more, and the grass, little leaves, and the ants, and the pebbles, and the, you know, and it's the microcosm meditation. I mean, there's so many ways to go at it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. I'm so grateful. It's been
It's
a
been
really,
so fun to talk to you.
yeah, it's been a really great conversation. I'd love to get you on another podcast, and to, you know, delve deeper into meditation and what that can look like. And
It'll be my pleasure, because I enjoyed so much this exchange. It's like talking to an old friend, you know, even though we don't know each other that much. So
yeah, yeah, it's such a funny
fantastic.
experience, you know. There, but it is an old friend, you know. I believe that those of us who are here with the calling that we have right now to help awaken and
Yeah.
help answer, like, we've been through many lifetimes together. We've
Yes,
been through many
I
many
agree.
journeys, and it is a beautiful homecoming, you know, to meet somebody like
Yeah.
yourself, and to
Thank you, Elena.
yeah, to reconnect to that and be like, ah, okay, you know, like between Calgary and Tuscany, there's now like
Yeah,
more connection throughout the world, right?
I love that. And I love that. For me, what's so refreshing about you in this case is this meeting somebody and being on the same wavelength. It's like
Yeah,
I don't have to explain why I'm telling you what I'm telling you, or even if what I'm saying, maybe I might say something you don't know or you don't understand, but it doesn't matter. There's no judgment. There's just like, oh, okay, tell me more about that. You know, I don't know about that, and you tell me more about that. And, you know,
yeah.
I love that vibration. And so I actually thank you for inviting me to be a part of this one today. And I'd love to be with you again.
Oh, you're welcome.
So,
Yeah, it would be
um,
great. We'll schedule that in, and you know, if people have specific questions they want to hear more about what's going on in your world, maybe we can ask those, and if not, I'm sure we can we can wander through the mysteries of
absolutely.
meditation and time, and yeah.
You know, if just as a gift, since I have, I believe, 2 or 3 free visualizations, either I can give you the links or direct people to that page, whatever you think it's easier. Somebody might be tickled and would like to try it, and you know, they're there as a gift. So
Yeah, yeah, you literally just read my mind. I was going to ask you that question, and you answered it before I got a chance to, which is great.
there you go.
Yeah, so the happy to provide links for people to learn more, and I'm excited to hear some of your visualizations. I do these really cool multi-layered tracks for myself, and that I share with people as well. And when you were talking about yours, I was like, oh, maybe I'm gonna like weave some of her tracks in with what I'm doing.
Oh, good. I'd love to listen to one of yours too.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll exchange links.
We'll swap. That sounds great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you go about your day, and I'm super grateful for the conversation and for the opportunity to, you know, share about the postpartum depression and uh, you know,
You talk
leaving
a lot
abuse. And,
about things.
yeah, yeah, it's really amazing.
Thank you,
So
Elena. Thank
yeah,
you
thank you so
so
much.
much. It's been a
Thank you so much.
pleasure.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me